which saw in the following 24 hours more than 16,000 inquiries, which was a 97% increase in people inquiring about prostate care. It is incredibly important that we're honest about health, especially in men who do take quite a lot longer to get the message that maybe there might be something wrong with them. An example of which would be in audiology, the average is about 10 years before the first signs of maybe having a hearing loss and actually taking action in it. So it is important that we address that. But whilst I've got the mic, I would like to close not only wishing His Majesty the King well and our Mayor, but I would also like to thank Councillor Carol Morris and her entire planning team for in the last 2 weeks successfully navigating a quite difficult planning set of applications, and also Christine Lyons for the incredible work her and her team have done to get those things through the skip load of legislation and difficulties and conversations in the background that we don't see, that happens every day to get these things ready for committee. So thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Henry. Councillor Rimmer. Sincere apologies, Councillor Sargent.
Not at all. Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I'd just like to remind members that on Tuesday, the 27th of February, we have our volunteer awards evening at the Towngate Theatre. And I do hope that all members will join us, or as many as possible, to celebrate the wonderful volunteers that we have all over our borough. There are a number of categories that they are put forward in, and I think it's incumbent on us, the members of the council, to go along and celebrate with them and congratulate them for all the good work they do throughout the year for us all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sargent. Councillor Rimmer.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I'm just going to, even sitting, I'm almost cut off. So I'll remain seated with your indulgence. Thank you. But in essence, I'm just, again, I praise my officers in the Regeneration and Directorate, or under my brief, in terms of the health facility that got approved last night and the hard work that they've been doing with Galliard Homes in terms of that. As an administration, we had an alternative vision for Basildon Town Centre that looked at mixed use, bringing in health facilities, bringing in entertainment. We felt that Basildon deserved better than mass tower blocks, which the previous administration was in favour of and pushing through with their agenda of rabbit hutches in the sky. We understand that a lot of it was pie in the sky from developers, but it was never deliverable. But it really was a sword of Damocles that was actually hanging over the heads of residents. And I hope that residents now feel assured that we're actually pushing forward with a different vision for Basildon, one that gets rid of the fear and the loathing that the previous administration showed to Basildon residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rimmer. And no more announcements? Okay, moving on to petitions. I have not been notified of any petitions to be submitted. Action taken in response to motions agreed at the last meeting. This report will be noted without debate. Can I take it? Item number 7, amendments of the Basildon Borough Local Development Scheme 2022-2027. I call on Councillor Moore, Cabinet Member for Strategic Planning and Infrastructure, to present his report. You have 10 minutes and you do not need a seconder.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. As members of the Council are aware, the Council has to prepare and maintain a local development scheme under Section 15 of the Planning and Compulsory Purchase Act 2004 as amended. The current local development scheme shown at enclosure 4 is the Council's project plan and timetable for preparing the local development documents relating to the development and use of land in the borough, which will eventually replace the local plan safe policies of 2007. The LDS helps the Council to establish plan-making priorities. The LDS provides information on the proposed programme of work to be undertaken by the Council and highlights key milestones where public engagement and consultation will be sought. Council considered a report updating the LDS in November 2022 that set out the scope of how the Council will prepare a new local plan and the time frame for preparing the plan. This is set out in enclosure 4. However, as members will be aware, the Secretary of State, Michael Gove, wrote to the Council on December the 19th, which challenged the adopted LDS timetable. The leader of the Council provided a robust response to the Secretary of State on January the 12th. All members were sent copies of the Secretary of State's letter and the leader's response, and it's also on the Council's website. The Council is working with the Planning Advisory Service. The Planning Advisory Service provides consultancy and peer support to help local authorities to deliver strategic planning. Local planning authorities are being asked to firstly review their LDS so that it reflects the most up-to-date timetable for producing their local plans, and secondly, takes account of any implications of the revised NPPF, which was issued on December the 19th. I can assure Council that Council officers and I are working alongside the Department for Levelling Up and Housing and Communities and their consultants to review the current LDS and consider whether it provides a robust timetable to submit the local plan to the Secretary of State by the currently programmed Q2 of 2026. Changes to the LDS will only be made that are considered appropriate through the ongoing work with the Planning Advisory Service and their consultants, along with providing an updated work programme and complementary resource plan to ensure delivery according to the LDS timetable. It is, of course, Madam Deputy Mayor, acknowledged that making changes to the LDS is a function of full Council. However, it is considered impractical to bring every change to Council that is necessary to ensure that the LDS remains up to date and robust. The recommendation, therefore, seeks that full Council delegates authority to amend the LDS timetable to the Chief Executive in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Strategic Planning and Infrastructure in the event of faster progress being made or slippage. This delegation would, however, be limited to this function only and would not give the Chief Executive or the Cabinet Member the ability to add new documents to the LDS. The documents of the LDS are set out in Section 2 of the Local Development Scheme at Enclosure 4. Madam Deputy Mayor, the recommendation is set out on page 30 of the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Let's see how this picture comes out. It'll soon adjust. I won't be intimidated by technology. I have a £14 hammer in my shed. This is regrettable because I wanted to call something into scrutiny in relation to this because we don't have the democratic committee system, and this was this council's opinion on the Thurrock Council's emerging local plan, and we are duty bound to make a comment and representation. Now, dear old cash-strapped Thurrock Council, that's about as straight as an iron bob note, has decided to put flood risk land at the southern borders of Langdon Hills, where it meets, where Thurrock and Basildon meets. At one point is the Wesley Heights, the highest point in Essex. We remember all the rows we had fighting to save Dry Street on either side of the chamber, and 2 summers ago we regrettably proved right when homes in Lee Chapel South were flooded because pastures on Dry Street were built on. Now that Thurrock Council wants to make the same mistake, but at bells and whistles and 5,000, not 700 new homes, now that is at a risk to the people in Thurrock. And as the local county member and my colleagues, Councillor Val Robbins and Councillor Walter Brown, they wanted this to come into scrutiny, but officers of the council, in consultation with Councillor Moore, were able to comment on this council's response to Thurrock's next stage of their local plan. We should have had that debate because it's more than just concerns about possible flooding. Councillor Blake a moment earlier spoke about climate change. Well, the Wesley Heights has been there forevermore, and in flash floods that rainwater has to go somewhere, whether people are on push bikes or 4x4s. That rain will fall and you can't control it. Then there is the infrastructure. We've got a new school popping up in my ward, in my county division, along Dry Street, Chapel Hill. Well, Councillor Rimmer, if you listen, you'll read what was written in the various documents I got supplied as a county councillor regarding the local plan process. And they're talking about the schools not having the capacity, the detail having to be worked on. So I trust Councillor Moore to a point as a member of the opposition, because I'm sure Councillor Moore will act professional. I would hope officers would work in the same vein, but we cannot support this because locally elected members for an area where 5,000 homes are going to be imposed upon if Thurrock Council gets its way, we should be objecting, challenging, pushing back, giving legitimate reasons to say no, 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 because it won't be our homes getting flooded, it will be the homes in Thurrock getting flooded. It will be the extra pressure on Basildon Hospital, the schools and the local infrastructure. That's what a local plan deals with. That's what a local plan addresses. And we should be telling Thurrock, the what pearls of wisdom from Norman Tebbit, to tell them to get on their bike and leave the Langdon Hills Ridge alone. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. I'm not too sure if it was relevant to the report, though, but thank you very much for your contribution. Any other speakers? Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'll just wait to see if I have to stand or sit. Oh, it looks like I'm sitting. So, thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. Can I start by wishing the Mayor all the best with his treatment and recovery on behalf of the Labour Group. We all hope to see him fighting fit again soon. Well, what a mess this administration has once again got us into. They withdrew the local plan to appease a small population of the borough, the ringleader of which has since done a runner from the council. They are now spending millions of pounds of taxpayers' money on the new local plan to move a few houses around on the map. Let me be clear, if we weren't spending millions of pounds going through the local plan process all over again, this council would be able to afford ridiculous bin collections. Planning appeals are being won all across the borough because we don't have an up-to-date local plan and because we are woefully short of our housing land supply targets, costing Basildon taxpayers even more money and damaging the reputation of our borough. This borough needs houses. Our young people need houses. This administration has been determined in recent years to not provide those houses. If you're a young person aspiring for home ownership in this borough, this administration is letting you down. And now the latest fiasco. The Secretary of State, Michael Gove, is calling Basildon the worst performing council in the country with regards to a local plan. Not one of the worst, but the worst. Not only should this be a point of shame for every councillor who voted to withdraw the local plan, but it also brings with it a serious risk of government intervention. I want this council to decide where things get built, but this administration are putting us at risk of losing that power. If we continue down the path of dither and delay, then Michael Gove will intervene and Basildon will become the dumping ground for every bad planning application in Essex. So I'm glad that this administration is now taking steps to bring more flexibility to the process and speed up some elements, and Labour will support any steps to do this. We must put an end to this NIMBY-first approach to planning and get on with addressing the serious need for housing in our borough, both private and social. I hope this amendment to the local development scheme is a step towards that.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. Councillor Carol Morris.
Right. Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Mayor. Obviously, the opposition doesn't think we should be spending too much more money on this application business, as has just been stated. I disagree with the statement that we are the worst performing borough in the council, in the country, because the stats say otherwise. And it's a great shame that people don't check on those stats before they make these stupid comments. Now, my reason for standing up was because of the options that that are suggested on page 32. This is telling us that we're suggesting we approve what Councillor Moore has just requested. It also gives alternative options that if we don't approve it, any amendments will have to keep coming back to extraordinary council meetings for each time, which obviously there is a cost implication to that. And since no members of this council want to spend money unnecessarily, I would recommend they do not go down that route. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carol Morris. Councillor Andrew Sharda.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor, and may I associate myself with your expressions of sympathy and support both to His Majesty the King, but more especially to my friend the Mayor. Having been precluded from speaking on the local plan for all of the past 10 years, I felt it behoved me to take this opportunity to speak on the LDS now that my perceived conflict has resolved itself and I find myself in a position to do so, a position I have a feeling I'll come to regret. I want to start off by paying tribute to my colleague Councillor Moore, who has been at the sticky end of this process for literally the entire time. And he has, with great indefatigability and a seemingly boundless reservoir of patience, dealt with both the shenanigans here in this place as well as those up in Westminster and the ever-moving goalposts of this befuddling and frustrating process. I think we all know that the planning system in this country is pretty potty. Before Councillor Harrison gets too full of his own crapulence, and I welcome him to his new position, along with Councillor Yacoub. It's been greeted with great enthusiasm, certainly on the Conservative benches. I hold out no optimism whatever that the absolute Horlicks of planning will improve one iota with the advent of a Labour government. The simple fact is, all the parties in Westminster, Conservative, Labour, Liberal Democrat, they all wring their hands about the housing crisis. They all pay lip service to protecting the Greenbelt, and they all say the right things about infrastructure. And it's something that affects all of us in this chamber and all of the people we represent. So we need to get to grips with it, and we need to send a clear message to all of our parliamentarians that they need to get a grip of it too. And whilst it's accepted that this council has delayed the adoption of a new local plan, it ought to be respected that there was a democratic decision to withdraw the previous draft local plan. And members took that decision precisely because we were encouraged by repeated assurances from successive ministers around the government's commitment to safeguarding the permanence of the Greenbelt. Now, we agreed on an LDS timetable in November of 2022, and Councillor Moore and our planning officers have been liaising directly with government officials as this progresses. So I'm pleased that the leader issued a robust reply to the Secretary of State's letter, reiterating our position that we remain committed to producing a locally led plan, one that properly reflects the genuine need, aspirations and priorities of the residents of Basildon Borough, and to doing so within a reasonable time frame, i.e. the government's own time frame. there's no case for government intervention in this process. We're abiding by their own statutory requirements. Councillor Moore is working towards a new iteration scheduled for submission in 2026 in accordance with the timetable set out in the Town and Country Planning Act. Now, we must abide by the minimum time requirements for public consultations, such as the Regulation 18 consultation we just completed. So, if the Secretary of State wants us to deliver it a full year ahead of schedule, that's fine and tickety-boo. If he could just let us know which parts of his statutory processes we're allowed to skip, and then when we can expect to see the additional resource to allow us to do that, I have every confidence that Councillor Moore will get straight on and do it. But I think it needs to be remembered that it was not the idea that it was all down to one man or one interest group that we withdrew the local plan. We withdrew the local plan because of widespread dissatisfaction with how that process had been put together, and out of a desire to do what successive governments and politicians of every party stripe claim to want to do, which is to safeguard the green belt in this borough. We are a green belt borough. We are right in the heart of the metropolitan green belt, and once that green belt is gone, it cannot be replaced. It's gone forever. So it behooves us to get this process right and to make sure that we have a local plan that is properly reflective of genuine local need and the aspirations of the people of this borough. Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Schrader. Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I just wanted to pick up on an assertion that Councillor Harrison made in his speech a minute ago, whereby if we already had an adopted local plan, then we would be able to afford weekly residual waste black sack collections. The budgets that we have for the local plan for 2024-25 and 2025-26 is 470,000, and budgeted for 2026-27 is 500,000. So that's only over 3 years. I understand that if we were to revert to weekly black sacks, that will be a £650,000 cost. Weekly bins will be a 1.3 million cost. We would expect that we would incur more landfill costs because we are not recycling as much. We would expect those additional landfill costs to be 1.3 million. And if we needed to replace vehicles to revert to a different means of collecting the rubbish, then that could be up to 3.4 million in costs. So clearly, the 3 years that we have budgeted to cover the cost of the local plan in no way will add up to being able to cater for any change or any major change to the current waste collection position that we have at the moment. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Councillor Baggott.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. No, I'm going to have to sit as well, so we really need to get those cameras sorted out, don't we? Councillor Harrison has got a proud record in this chamber of getting things wrong, misspeaking, and then having to apologise afterwards. This time round, he continues that trend, so he's got a perfect hat-trick, but I don't think he needs to apologise on this occasion because his misspeaking was really just with a political motive, and we can all forgive politics in the chamber. So I just want to correct a couple of the illusions that he espoused when it came to the local plan, the withdrawal of the local plan, and the council's history of producing the local plan. Because what he might forget is there was a period of time where his administration were putting together the local plan with the wild and wacky plan of attaching traveller sites to every new development and wanting to spread travellers across the borough like fairy dust, something that went down incredibly well with the public. And I remember being at a sporting village meeting, packed out with people that made the feelings known about how daft they thought that particular idea was from the Labour group. They then continued their illustrious record of producing a local plan with a plan for high-rise tower blocks that were going to create a windy city of Basildon with ghettos miles high, you know, sort of full of rabbit hutches, as Councillor Rimmer has already said this evening. I was very, very clear on many, many meetings with the public and residents, and aware that we had a plan that was creaking at the time, that a local plan that was had gone through various iterations with various posturings from government, as Councillor Schrader has alluded to, and that the risks of withdrawing the local plan were that we might be held for speculative development. But it was in this very room, and I can't remember now whether it was an all-member meeting or just an administration meeting, where we sat with legal counsel. And the legal counsel appointed by the council, said there is an opportunity here, should you wish, to withdraw the local plan in order to actually revisit Greenbelt. Because the government's rhetoric is now changing significantly. Greenbelt should be sacrosanct, and that's a position you've always held. So there is an opportunity to consider withdrawing the local plan in order to ensure the Greenbelt is protected. So we acted in good faith, and we acted on that very basis. Not on a whim, not on sort of one person actually cajoling everybody, but on the basis of the sound legal advice of a legal professional that was actually employed by the council to give us that advice. Going in with our eyes open. And the public were aware, and we have seen it, that it would lead to speculative development. And what are we seeing now? We're seeing speculative development. I am continuing, as has been said, to lambast government and Mr Gove with his forked tongue speak of protecting Greenbelt but not protecting Greenbelt, on the fact that we are constantly harangued by planning inspectors who say that we don't have a land supply, therefore we must build on Greenbelt. And the government really need to get its act sorted out in that regard. And that has been, today I was at a meeting of South Essex councils, and again the disjointment of government departments is highlighted, when in fact Homes England are saying that while they have a drive to build houses, and that is their mandate, they're not going to fund authorities around Basildon for the building of those houses, because they don't have the resources. And the reason they don't have those resources is they're going to prioritise areas that have actually gone for devolution. So, again, a mixed message coming from government departments. And this is what councils are having to fight all the way across the country, this mixed message. We have been very, very consistent throughout. We have said, under the auspices of Councillor Moore, we will put together a sound local plan, one that engages with the public, listens to the public views and is responsive to the public's views. We will get it right while fighting and defending Greenbelt and doing our best. We will continue to harangue any government that is inconsistent with their approach to Greenbelt. And I applaud Councillor Moore's report today and thank him for it.
Thank you, Councillor Baggott. Councillor Rimmer.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I can't believe what I'm hearing tonight. I mean, people are complaining about the local plan and not getting on with it, but in the same breath talking about voting against a vital step that we need to get on with it. And I think we all, as a chamber, should do the responsible thing, the adult thing, and actually vote for this motion today. I also balk at the hypocrisy of the Deputy Leader of the Labour Group, who voted on a planning committee against a planning application which was already in the local plan. And he basically was advised that there was a strong possibility it would go to appeal. It was in Greenbelt, and he still voted against it. So to talk about the cost of appeals when going against officer advice to that extent, and talking about homes for young people whilst voting against homes for young people, shows that he's a flip-flopper, just like the leader of the Labour Party nationally. Yeah. So we see what sort of...
You keep to the report?
I am keeping to the motion.
Okay.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Is it a report, the report?
No, I'm responding to the debate.
Okay.
Thank you. These points were brought up in debate and I'm refuting them. So I think basically it's not acceptable for him to be talking that way with a forked tongue in respect of caring about homes for people, young people, and caring about and saying that he wants to build on Greenbelt when he's voting against it, and talking about about appeals when actually he's made decisions that have resulted in appeals and have resulted in costs of defending those appeals. So you can't really talk in that fashion. I mean, I must admit, this whole process of building a local plan and doing it in a very binary fashion is unfortunate. It's underpinned by law made by the last Labour government in 2004, as it says in these reports. And you can see that Stalinist thread running through it in terms of the local plan process. We should be able to say as a council, look, we've got 80% of this done, let's bank that and let's work on the other 20%. And we would have got this done 5 years ago, at least. And that would have been to every party agreeing to it. But unfortunately, we're left with this Blairite, Gordon Brown agenda, and it needs to be unravelled at some point so we can get proper planning policy happening in this country. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rimmer. I'm going to call on Councillor Larkin to speak next. Can I just remind everyone to speak to the report this evening, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Deputy Mayor. I'd like to make some statements here because I don't quite understand where we're coming from. Councillor Schrader mentioned protection of our green belt, which I cannot agree with because of the recent application that's gone through at Dunton Road, which happened to be a farmer's field. Nothing on it, a farmer's field. Is that protection of our green belt, which our planning department had it up for approval? And miraculously, within a few weeks, the appeal was heard on it because it was refused again. And it was passed. So I don't say that is correction of protecting our green belt. Councillor Moore, I'm looking at the delay, which was our borough plan. And all of a sudden, some houses were going to appear through Little Bursted in a country lane, and it was also refused. And it delayed our borough plan. I'd like to mention as well what Councillor Rimmer said. You know, being his position, he didn't even know about this beautiful school, which is called Chapel Hill, which is in Langdon Hills. Well, it's part of Dry Street.
Sorry, Councillor Larkin, can you please speak to the report?
No one else.
I am speaking to the report. These are what people have mentioned. I'm speaking to answer what I believe in.
Someone's talking about their dirty weekend caravans a minute earlier.
So, I'm sorry, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, you go.
I shall carry on.
Yeah.
Because also, I mean, not many of us approved with Dry Street, but I think it was a beautiful country lane, and I think the only thing that really we've won on it is the beautiful school. But then that will only cover 420 places and 56 nursery places, and that will take its place with all the houses that are actually being built there.
Not what Thurrock Council.
No, of course not. And this, according Wesley Green, with all these houses, you know, thank you, Thurrock Council. And let's all join in at having a go at Councillor Harrison. And, you know, I think that's not very nice. He's just trying to say he wants to protect the green belt, you know. But everybody on the Conservative side are all, oh, Councillor Harrison, you know. Well, no, sorry about that. I'll talk about the bins later, Kevin. So I don't think that's fair. You know, let's try and be friendly about it, not keep slinging mud at everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Larkin. Councillor McGeorge.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I actually wasn't intending on speaking on this, but it's getting a little bit ridiculous. At no point did Councillor Harrison say, we're voting against this, let's get it through, but we're going to vote against it. He said in his speech, we are supporting any steps to get this through as quick as we can. We will be voting to support this. Are we really going to sit and play this game? We're not children. Thank you. What I would like to bring up, though, is my comment that you made in regards to Councillor Harrison going against the planning officer's recommendations on a planning meeting. I've substituted on at least 3 where many of your group have done the self-same thing. So let's not sit and pick at people. We're here to do a job. Let's act like grown-ups, just for one night, and actually get through, please.
Thank you, Councillor McGeorge. Councillor Gascoigne.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will definitely not be attempting to stand up this time round. I obviously welcome this news, improving efficiency and allowing us to speedily get through this quite long and protracted process is, of course, something I think, well, thanks for the clarity from the Labour group. I did hear that, by the way. I thought you were going to vote for this as well. So, and I will not be making any personal insults or otherwise towards Councillor Harrison. But what I did want to point on, just touch on a few notes here. For example, Conservatives are, make this absolutely categorically clear, we are the defenders of the Greenbelt in a way that I don't think any other group here can make the same kind of claims. And I think it's very unfair, particularly for the independents, to say that, oh, well, you lost your appeal, so therefore you're not defending the Greenbelt. Well, of course, we don't have control over the appeal. We have a control over the process and voting for it. And consistently, we are voting against the Greenbelt developments. We do not want them in our town. We want to protect our Greenbelt. That's what we do. If we lose it on appeal, that's completely outside of our control. So I think it's unfair to criticise on that one. So I won't make any personal attacks to any individual members of the Labour group, but I still feel like, much like, and we'll see as this meeting develops, I don't see any serious plan from the Labour group as in terms of what their alternative is. Labour apparently want to build things. Okay, well, where? What exactly is your plan? What are your policies to build things? And instead of just saying, oh, well, we're against NIMBYism, it's very, very unclear exactly which way you are against NIMBYism. Very unclear, I think, to any of the residents as to what your plans are. And again, it seems a little bit wishy-washy, like the Labour leader of your party in general. And I think until we have a clear picture from Labour, until Labour can actually put their finger on what they actually want to do, particularly in our borough, and where we're going to get any homes, if any at all, I don't think you could build a home. I don't think you can build a shed, never mind any homes or any serious estates. Until we hear clear plans from you, I'm sorry, it's all just hot air as far as I'm concerned. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Gascoigne. Councillor Walter Brown.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I'll be voting against this. What have I done? Oh, am I?
I've got it.
Okay. Hi. Sorry. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Mayor. I'll be voting against this, and the reason I'll be voting against this is because I don't trust the Tories with Dunton Garden suburbs and the land south of Dry Street in Thurrock. The broke Thurrock Council. Thank you very much.
Sorry, I heard the first part of what you said, but I think you were interrupted. But it's okay. Okay, it's okay. Okay, thank you very much. Is there anybody else that wants to speak on this?
Councillor Moore. Oh.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I'll be voting against it because there is no green belt if Dunton Garden suburb gets built. It will be directly the other side of Basildon and Langdon Hills. And as for Dry Street, you took away our riding school, and now Thurrock's going to build her houses just across the road on the other side of the road. the road today is a foot deep in water. So that aids and abets the flooding. So I'll be voting against it. It's a waste of time.
Here, here.
Thank you. I now call on Councillor Moore to round up. You have 10 minutes to round up the debate.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. Actually, I thought I might need an hour to summarise all that's been going on. And out of the hour, I think we spent 5 minutes talking about the local development scheme. Councillor Smith raised the issue of Thurrock. He never mentioned the local development scheme. He cannot support the Basildon Borough local development scheme. It has nothing to do with Thurrock. It is our local development scheme. And I'd thank Councillor Harrison because he did say he and his group were going to support this paper. I'm not going to go through all the others trying to summarise the conversations generally around Greenbelt, the local plan and so on. I think a lot of people had forgotten we're here to talk about the local development scheme, and I would move to the recommendation. Madam Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. So we take it. Okay. 4 against, no. Abstention. 4. Okay. For all those in favour, can you keep your hands up for a while? Got it?
The dry straight.
They got it? Any abstentions? No. Thank you. The vote is carried at 29 to 5. Okay, great, thank you. Okay, moving on to item number 8. Item number 8, corporate plan, refresh and full general fund and HRA budget and council tax setting 24-25. Before I invite Councillor Sullivan to introduce his report, I wish to advise members of the procedure I intend to follow in connection with this item, which all group leaders have been advised of in advance of the meeting. As has happened in previous years, due to the nature of this item and that the General Fund and HRA report have been amalgamated, I intend to allow all group leaders or deputy group leaders a little additional time to speak on the item. You will also note that the report is a joint report which deals with a review of the corporate plan as well as the budget and HRA. I will therefore allow the leader just 5 minutes, not 15, 5 minutes to introduce the corporate plan, review elements of the report. As happened in previous years, Councillor Sullivan, the Cabinet Member for Resources and Commercial, shall then have 10 minutes to introduce the budget elements of the report. I then intend to focus the debate on the report moved by the leader and Councillor Sullivan. As part of this, I will allow each group leader 10 minutes to speak on the main item rather than 5 minutes provided by the Constitution. All other speeches will be timed at 5 minutes per speaker. With regards to any budget amendments, I shall ask that these be circulated at the start of the usual break. I will allow sufficient time in the break in order that amendments can also be properly considered by groups. I will then ask that they be moved and dealt with when the meeting reconvenes after the break. Speeches on each amendment will be timed at 5 minutes per speaker, including any member moving an amendment. I intend to allow group leaders to move their group amendments if they so wish, even though they would no doubt have already spoken on the main item. There will be no provision to wind up on amendments before the vote. The debate can then return to the substantive, and any member who didn't speak before the interval on the main report will have the opportunity to do so. I will then give Councillor Sullivan 10 minutes to wind up at the end of the debate. I now call on Councillor Andy Baggott, Leader of the Council, to make a statement. 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. Historically, this council has produced a corporate plan, and that corporate plan has been a bit of a boom and bust corporate plan because it was always set within a year or 2 years because of the vagaries of the electoral cycle in Basildon. When we came into administration, we said that we wanted to actually have something that's more strategic, far longer looking, which then allows officers to be strategic in their thinking, allows us to have a better business case to put with business partners, and to actually put us on less of a boom and bust trajectory. And that's what we've actually been achieving over the last couple of years. And we've put together our corporate plan very simply by listening to residents, finding out where their priorities lie, and then starting to align what the residents want and the engagement that we conduct with residents into that corporate plan. It therefore follows sensibly that if our corporate plan reflects the priorities of the council and what we're going to deliver, that it should be linked to the resources of the council, which is in effect the budget. And that again is something that where there's been an element of a disconnect in the past. What we're now doing therefore is we are aligning the corporate plan with the resources that we have as a council, allowing us to prioritise where we're going to go, set our stall out, and then start to deliver for residents in the areas that we are prioritising based upon that engagement. That's what I have to say with the background to the corporate plan refresh. I would like to thank the officers over the last year that have worked very, very hard to ensure that this administration, when it says it's going to do something, has actually delivered for the residents and gone out and done it. I thank you all, and I now hand over to Councillor Sullivan, and would remind members that this is possibly Councillor Sullivan's last budget for us, and therefore commend him to produce it.
Thank you. Councillor Sullivan, you have 10 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. For the second year in succession, I am presenting a budget, the compilation of which has been adversely affected by unforeseen and extreme financial pressures. This has again required difficult decisions that, as a Conservative administration, we would not take unless absolutely necessary. Despite these external shocks to the finances of the Council, the administration has nevertheless continued its promised programme of investments in the borough and will continue to implement projects and policies that improve the lives of its citizens while ensuring the Council remains financially viable both now and in the future. Before I go any further, I would like to thank officers for their hard work over the course of which has been another challenging financial year. As detailed in the report, the General Fund has seen an additional net £2.3 million revenue budget pressure in the current financial year to add to the £1.5 million forecast budget gap for 2024-25. This was due to an increase in the cost of homelessness of £1.5 million over budget, the cost of wages also being £800,000 over budget due to the government-mandated 5.94% pay rise, while the cost of the new cinema added another £600,000. Even the £600,000 fall in utility costs should be viewed in the context of still being £800,000 higher than in 2022. To help address these impacts and others, we are therefore proposing to increase council tax by 2.98%. HRA rents will increase by 7.7% per the permitted formula. As explained in the report and demonstrated by graphics, even a slightly smaller increase will be insufficient to keep the HRA sustainable and be able to withstand any further unexpected financial shocks beyond the additional £11 million allocated for Brook House, as well as implement an extensive capital programme and the Safe and Sound Estates regeneration. It should also be borne in mind that last year, Morgan Sindall received a contractually agreed 10.1% inflation rate increase, while rents increased by 7%, the effects of which still feed into the current HRA position. Increasing rents by 7.7% also makes the HRA more viable in the long term by making inroads into its 30-year debt repayment schedule, as shown in the graphic. We recognise the additional costs the rent increase will impose on those who do not have rent paid for them via housing benefit, and will therefore increase the discretionary housing payment fund by £50,000, an increase in that fund also of 7.7% to dovetail with the rent increase. Returning to the general fund, even with the council tax increase, the administration has made a range of efficiencies and cost-cutting measures, such as saving £100,000 a year from its well-paid contract and saving £40,000 by removing all pay as a payment option, while implementing £1 million of savings via IT upgrades. As well as efficiencies, there has also been some assistance from the Conservative government with a 5% increase in government funding. In addition, a restructuring exercise was undertaken by the Chief Executive, and which will be discussed later in the agenda, to ensure the officer management structure is as efficient as possible while delivering on the needs of the taxpayers and the administration. Even though dealing with the financial pressures I've mentioned, the Conservative administration has still managed to fulfil its promises made in the last budget. We have completed and opened the swimming pool and skate park in Pitsea. We have continued the Langdon Community Centre redevelopment, started a new skate park in Billericay, and undertaken work to regenerate estates under the Safe and Sound project. Looking to the future, we will also continue to fund free weekend and Christmas car parking in Billericay and Wickford to keep those high streets viable. We will fund community wardens to keep our citizens safer, while raising the grounds maintenance budget by £136,000 to increase the amount of grass cutting and or pruning across the borough to improve its appearance. The budget also continues our ambitious investment programme with a continuation of the Safe and Sound programme, £1.15 million allocated funding for the new cinema in the town centre, £2.55 million allocated for the Community Diagnostic Centre in Pitsea, £2.3 million for the Creative Campus in the town centre, £700,000 to complete maintenance works to the Towngate Theatre, as well as £100,000 for member investments. In the context of the general financial circumstance, as well as the financial pressures specific to Basildon Council, I can therefore justify the proposed increases detailed in the recommendations, which will enable the Council to remain both financially viable and able to continue with this administration's plans to improve the borough. In addition, not only is this year's budget balanced, but the projected budget deficits for the following 2 years, so long as there are no further unforeseen financial shocks, can be realistically managed. We are therefore not in the position, as so many other councils are, of issuing or being in danger of issuing a Section 114 notice. To be able to state that, having dealt with the financial pressures of the last 2 years, while delivering and continuing to deliver major investments and improvements to the borough, enables me to recommend this budget to Council for approval. Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Can I call on Councillor Andrew Schrader?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. Normally I would rise in support of this budget, but I shall remain seated before, otherwise my head will disappear. Moved by my colleague, Councillor Sullivan. As he said in his own speech, this has been an extremely difficult series of budgets, given the unprecedented headwinds faced by local government. This is also his last budget, as he is standing down in May, and while this budget will, I'm sure, take its share of political brickbats, I, for one, would like to place on record my thanks to him, not just for his many kindnesses to me over the past 11 years, God help him, he's been my ward colleague, but at a time when we're seeing councils up and down the country handing in Section 114 bankruptcy notices. I also want to thank him for his able stewardship of this borough's finances over the many years he's held the resources portfolio. Ultimately, however, this is a difficult budget, and I think we can appreciate, while it's gratifying that we're not insolvent, that will come as scant consolation to our residents who are struggling. There have been difficult decisions, but someone once said in this chamber, to govern is to choose. We can't duck the hard choices. The rising cost of homelessness has driven a coach and horses through our budget. It's an issue affecting local housing authorities up and down the country, and as I said at a recent District Council Network Emergency Housing Summit, it has all the makings of doing to District Council budgets what adult social care has done to county councils. So we must raise council tax. Nobody wants to, it's hardly a vote winner, but it's what needs to be done to ensure we maintain the vital services our residents increasingly rely on. We're also putting up rents, which I sincerely deprecate, but as Councillor Sullivan said, there's no alternative if we're to keep the HRA on a sustainable footing. I'm gratified we've been able to increase the discretionary housing payment fund, and hopefully that will lessen the impact for tenants. It isn't all doom and gloom, and I warmly welcome the ongoing improvements at Laindon Community Centre, the new skate park underway at Lake Meadows in Billericay, along with all the new play areas we've opened across the borough, and of course the commitment to continue with the Safe and Sound programme of estate renewal. I'm pleased to see the free weekend and Christmas parking in Billericay and Wickford will continue to support our high street retailers who struggle to compete with the out-of-town shopping destinations. We've also maintained our commitment to put our money where our mouth is in addressing crime and antisocial behaviour through our Community Wardens programme. I welcome the additional funding for grounds maintenance, which I think we can all agree really got out of hand last year. I also think the Pitsea CDC, the Basildon Creative Campus, renovation of the Towngate Theatre, all important investments in the long-term health and vitality of the social fabric of our borough. There are precious few quick fixes in politics, Madam Deputy Mayor. It isn't easy to manage competing priorities, to maintain a balanced budget without putting an unbearable burden upon the taxpayer. Years ago, I had the habit of referring to Councillor Sullivan as the Iron Chancellor of Basildon, which, with his customary finger on the pulse of popular culture, he took to be a reference to Prince Otto von Bismarck. But Councillor Sullivan has delivered tonight, as he always has, a balanced budget that protects core services with minimal increases whilst also continuing to make those vital investments in our long-term aspirations for the borough. I can't pretend I'll vote for it with any great sense of alacrity, but I will do so with some confidence that Councillor Sullivan has bequeathed to us a balanced budget for this year and, as he outlined, for the projected budget deficits for the next couple of years, so that Basildon won't be one of those councils issuing Section 114 notices and lumbering their residents with the prospect of tax increases of 20% or more. We've dealt with the financial pressures of the last 2 years, and thanks to Stuart's deft management of this borough's finances with the Section 151 officer, we'll continue to deliver value for money services to our residents and long-term investment in their aspirations. Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Schrader. Anyone? Is there anyone else that wishes to speak? Oh, Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. Madam Deputy Mayor, another year, another Tory budget that raises council tax and social housing rents for those who are struggling the most with the cost of living crisis. A dying town centre in Basildon dominated by an empty cinema, a town centre in Laindon that has been left as an empty shell for years now, unsafe social housing full of mould, damp and heating issues, and estates across the borough where people feel afraid in their own homes due to the drug crime and antisocial behaviour on their doorsteps. And while all this is going on, the Conservative administration has made a complete mess of the waste collection system in this borough. Everywhere you look, there are mountains of black and pink waste bins piled high, black bins not being collected because they are too full, and blue and white bags getting wet in the rain because they are not fit for purpose. While I welcome the Cabinet Member for Waste promise that to replace the blue and white bags, the question must be asked how we got to this situation in the first place. Why did we start the new waste system with recycling bags that are not fit for purpose? How much money has been wasted on these bags that are not fit for purpose? Will the new bags actually work? Or will this be yet another situation where the Basildon Tories are trying to spend their way out of a hole of their own making and ending up further down than they were before? But we all know that whatever issues the blue and white bags, they are nothing compared to the absolute disaster caused to our borough by the weekly bin, black bin, by the fortnightly black bin collections. Madam Deputy Mayor, when the bins aren't being collected because they are too full, the answer isn't to give residents yet more bins to put in their gardens that are already overflowing with bins of all shapes, colours and sizes. The answer is to collect those bins more frequently. Residents do not want black bin waste sitting in their homes for weeks waiting to be collected. They don't want dirty nappies, pet waste and other smelly or hazardous waste sitting in the bottom of their bins for 2 weeks. They do not want to look around their estates and see mountains of black sacks dumped on every street corner. They want weekly bin collections. This Labour group cannot support any budget that does not address this most pressing of issues. And if we are lucky enough to be elected to the council, to lead this council in May, then we will repay the trust the people of Basildon will put in us by moving heaven and earth to bring back weekly bin collections. It is what the public demand of us, and it is what the borough needs. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, it is not just the waste system that is letting down residents in this budget. It's social housing too. When our residents have lived in this borough for their entire lives, turning to this council because they have nowhere else to go, when they need support with their housing for their families, they are added to a never-ending list and told to wait and wait some more because there are no properties available to house them. This will change under a Labour administration. We will put those most at need front and centre of our housing strategy. We will ensure more social housing is built through national government grants and schemes. When the government offer the council £10 million for town centre improvements, a Labour administration won't turn it down. We'll embrace it and use it to benefit those most at need in the borough. This borough desperately needs social housing, but it also needs to upgrade the existing social housing that residents are already living in. Brook House has been in the headlines in recent weeks because of the terrible conditions and endless dither and delay by this administration that has resulted in spiralling costs and ever more unlivable conditions. But Brook House is far from the only source of embarrassment for our borough's housing stock. Mould, damp, broken heating systems, poor repairs are all issues that my colleagues and I hear about day in, day out from our ward residents. Our most vulnerable residents need a council that will invest in their housing conditions. The Conservative administration and this budget is failing in that regard. Instead of fixing social housing in the borough, the Tory administration are raising their taxes and raising their rents. Those who are struggling the most with the cost of living crisis are being asked to pay more than they ever have before. National Tories raising inflation and causing a cost of living crisis, local Tories raising taxes and making things worse for our most vulnerable. I want to end by acknowledging the issues of our council and councils across the country are facing. Tough choices are being forced upon councils, and I accept that Basildon is no different. But it'd be remiss of me to not also acknowledge how the council's got in this situation. Because we all know the real reason for council tax being so high and services being cut across the country is the procession of 5 Conservative Prime Ministers over 14 years, each more devastating to the UK economy than the last. David Cameron's austerity that slashed local government funding across the board, Liz Truss's disastrous 44-day stint as Prime Minister that resulted in the inflation and market chaos that we are still reeling from today. So whether it's the Tories in Westminster or the Tories in Basildon, their budgets are not fit for purpose. They do not address the waste and housing needs of our residents, and they will not be supported by this Labour group.
Thank you very much, Councillor Harrison. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We heard earlier tonight from Councillor Schrader references made to imperial German politicians. I would have thought, well, case not Bismarck, but definitely King Ludwig's idea on spending, which got Bavaria into a whole heap of trouble and made it a satellite state of Prussia and the German state. That's the analogy I would use to counter that point raised by Councillor Schrader. Now, I want to come at this quite sensibly. Now, it's easier just to throw punches at Councillor Sullivan's away, but let's face it, he's the chief engineer. Now, if the captain of the ship wants to drive on the wide rough weather, ride over rocks, it's down to the chief engineer to fix the problems. And to be fair to Councillor Sullivan, he's done a fair job of fixing problems the captain of this present ship has been doing. I'll speak later about to lighten that point further, but I want to come on to the housing. Now, when I was chairman of housing, the opposition Conservatives went, oh, you mustn't put up the rents, you mustn't do that. But it was costing the government more money than it was tenants, because 2/3 of our tenants get their rents paid for by the government. And the whole point about it was the HRA debt is in excess of £200 million. Now, when we have an housing crisis, it makes perfectly good sense to try and lower that debt as quickly as you can. Then you can start using the HRA for positive loans to actually build up our housing stock. Now, one thing I put forward, because I'm genuinely not a NIMBY, there's a piece of land in front of my house. I even met Councillor Rimmer there. You know, you holding your clipboard, just knocking on some doors, and Councillor Bloke knows where it is. And as chairman of housing, I put it forward for 8 disabled bungalows to free up 8 of our houses. How many of those 8 bungalows do you think have been built 3 years since I put that forward? None. Quite right, Councillor Medley, none. And we've got an ever-increasing bill to house homeless people. Chapelgate is just sitting there. The hoarding's gone, 200 plus properties. What has this council done in 3 years? You could write on the back of the new picture of the king on the wall. It's about the size of a postage stamp. Zilch. So I would say, so rather than just being mean, critical, opposition comments, you need to start thinking about that. You need to start getting that housing stock built, because it is getting more and more expensive and more people are being made homeless because of hard-nosed landlords playing the benefit cap, because there is a difference between outside of London and the London boroughs. And if you was an hard-nosed landlord in this borough, you would rather evict your tenant and speak to a London borough, say, can we house one of your tenants, because we can get more in rent because of a higher housing benefit cap. So this homeless bill is going to get worse and worse and worse. So the principle of putting up the rents to put the HRA in a better financial standing so we can build the housing stock has my group's full support, because it's financially sensible. Now, getting back to the overall budget of the council, this is not the year to be putting up council tax. We've just entered a recession. We're just dealing with all the mess caused by what Councillor Harrison alluded to, the Trussonomics, and people are still hurting. People are still paying rip-off energy bills. So every little bit of help we can give the people, we should. Now, it's easy to sit here and say, OK, so how would you do a freeze in council tax? Well, you've taken away my opportunity. Now, over a year ago, I called it into scrutiny about the changes with the refuse service and said we should have got to go for, if we've got to separate dry recycling, have clear, have blue-coloured disposable bags. It's hygienic, it's effective, and it's cheaper to collect, excuse me. But the administration was like, no, we're cracking on with these recycling bags, or as I like to call them, pathogen bags. And the cost of that, and I have an email back from officers, was just shy of £650,000 for those 2 recycling bags. And then added on top of it was the cost of delivering them, to be fair, alongside the wheelie bins, so the figure would obviously be a lot less. For the new bags was of £125,000. Now that could have easily put to, now because Councillor Blake has chosen to get a new design for recycling bags, I don't know if they'd be better, I don't know if they'd be worse, because we're yet to see them, and I understand Councillor Blake is going to have a consultation, so I won't chastise him on that point, because it is not fair. But in my opinion, you should have disposable bags because they're hygienic. Now that alone, that's 650, and that 125, which can be brought down, I would imagine, because wheelie bins are a lot dearer to drop off than bags. That's a council tax freeze, if we'd have bought the right bags the right time. It is Councillor Blake. The full whack on council tax increase It's far less than 650 plus 125. Far less than that. And we could be giving everybody this year a council tax freeze. So, on these 2 points, I support the rent increase, to conclude, but I don't support the council tax increase. And we should be helping residents. We can't help what the government of the day wants to do with taxpayers' money. We just get a ballot paper the same as everybody else. Some people might in here want to put out leaflets and posters and do things on the internet, but we're still citizens in this country, and the only way we can change things is through the ballot box. And we have the power in our hands to help residents tonight, and we should take that up. I'd like, on this fine, to wrap up, I'd like to thank Councillor Sullivan. He's not had an easy role as Cabinet Member for Finance under the present leadership. When it was Councillor Turner leading the council, I'm sure it was a lot easier job to be in charge of finance, but that's neither here nor there. And I don't want to open wounds in public amongst the Conservative group. So I shall leave it there. Thank you, Madam Mayor, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Smith. Councillor Baggott.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I'd like to reassure Councillor Smith that we're not in recession. Just saying we're in recession doesn't make us in recession. And I'd also like to point out to you that you do have to be consistent in the things you say, because when he was Deputy Chair of Housing, I know that there were SEMPRA schemes that he quashed, that he said, don't want to build. These houses must not be built. So you can't say on one hand that you've got a problem with housing and that we need houses, and then go around, because it suits you in your ward, quashing house building proposals. It's just inconsistent. But moving on, Councillor Harrison said that he would fight and do everything for weekly bin collections and building housing. I respect that, but of course this is a budget debate, and therefore the perfect opportunity is to have presented an alternative budget showing weekly bin collections, showing how they're costed, what he would actually do in order to actually fund those weekly bin collections, so the public and everybody can see how that would look. If he's really committed to weekly bin collections, I'm looking forward to the alternative budget that will be proposed this evening on budget night to show and demonstrate how committed they are to a weekly bin collection and what services they would cut and what they would change in order to get to that. And I look forward to that later on this evening. Because there is no magic money tree. And we have not shirked our responsibility to deliver for residents while keeping a balanced budget. I was saying the other day, the Birmingham Council, 25% hike in council tax. We're talking about 2.9%. Croydon, something like 15% hike in council tax. I don't know what Thurrock's is, but I think it's around 10 to 12%. And those are hikes, excuse me, those are hikes which actually don't even deliver services. Those are just to stay on level pegging. Now, I know other Cabinet members will be talking about their respective portfolios, so I'm just going to touch upon the community wardens and the work that they do, because, again, we were talking about antisocial behaviour and drug use and everything else, and the community wardens, in conjunction with the police, have actually been working very hard to actually stamp that out. And when I've gone around the borough on the Meet the Leader events that I have, 2 years ago, the one thing that was constantly being brought to me was concerns about drug dealers, concerns about drug use and everything else. And that has tailed off. I'm not saying it's stamped out, and I don't think we'll ever stamp it out, but it has made a difference. And the community wardens, to an extent, provide an element of resilience, because when the community wardens are out doing their work, it frees the police up to do other things. And we've seen recently, the police out in force. We've also seen the police stopping motorists and doing motorist checks in Basildon, where they arrested a number of people that were driving and carrying out criminal activity, which is, at the end of the day, the police's job. And I was contacted by the Echo today about the other police operation they've been doing, which is stopping motorists that are driving and talking on their mobile phones, and the record amount of fines that they have issued in that regard, keeping our streets safe. I talked about the new safety wards we've got for transport, where people can now be assured they can get on trains, they can get on buses, and feel safe as they go about their commute. I mean, it's sad in this day and age you have to worry about feeling safe when you get on a train or a bus, but it is the state of the land that that's what we need. So the community wardens are something that I'm particularly proud of, that we took the step to actually invest and continue with. Recently, I also saw the new street sweeper, the enhanced street sweeper that we have, which is going to, as part of our Safe and Sound project, get into those estates where, because of the nature and the makeup of the estates, they'd be notoriously difficult to actually sweep and clean. Because we are committed to actually sorting out our estates and making sure that the people that live there can live in a safe and comfortable environment. We are also committed to having conversations with other councils with regard to sharing services, because as we go forwards and develop, there are going to be some areas where we might want to explore, even if it's back office operations, where we can either enhance a service, where we can apply resilience, or where we can actually make cost savings as far as a council. Because we are committed, and under Councillor Sullivan's stewardship, we have kept to that commitment of making sure that we deliver for our residents, that our residents get value for money with the council tax. We understand that they actually are paying for it. We understand that there is a hike, and therefore they deserve to ensure that they get the best value for money that we can possibly get and squeeze out for our residents, and that's what we will do. I am very, very happy with this budget and the work that Councillor Sullivan and Mr Sparks have done in producing this budget. I thank them, and again, I commend it to this chamber.
Thank you, Councillor Baggett. Is no one else? Oh, oh, you do. Okay, Councillor Cannon.
Thank you, Madam Deputy. Yeah, apologies. I'll just have to be Danny for now because it looks like we're missing a mic. Okay, I was going to kind of speak at the end of the night after I heard a bit more debate, but I might as well come in now. As a Pitsea councillor, I'm pleased to see that the budget includes significant investments in the diagnostic centre, which should really change health outcomes in Pitsea and further afield. And I think that's a really positive step that's included in the budget and something we can be proud of. Also, as a Pitsea member, we, as the other councillors would have had it, is chewed off really about the landscaping issue that we had recently. It's good to see that we've been able to request and receive extra funding towards the ground maintenance. So I'm thankful that Councillor Sullivan has included that in the budget. Because it was a definite issue for Pitsea, and we can look forward to seeing improvements as we come into the next summer period. I think the other things that I was going to come and comment on was I was going to try and comment on some of the opposition questions, but I think the opposition questions amounted to nothing. I think we heard from Labour, really, to be honest with you. I was saving my fire to respond. But to be honest with you, we had a comment early in the evening about being adults. And from the deputy leader, all I heard was a list of I want this, I want this, I want this, like someone seeing stars in a sweet shop. There was no ideas, and as the leader of the council said, there was definitely no solution about how he wanted to achieve the purchase of all these sweets. With our administration and with the Conservatives, what you get is real ideas backed up by proper strategies and implemented. One of those examples would be a few years back the idea of commercial investments. I think Basildon Council has proved, along with the strategy, along with the idea from the Conservative administration, we've seen a result of now around £4 million a year coming into the council to fund services. That's totally false, well, there you go. You believe that, you carry on, because that you support them to your dying day. You support them. So if anyone wants to vote for the independents, they know they're going to get Labour. Carry on. So there you go. You heard it here tonight. So put that in your leaflet. Yeah. So you get a real idea and you get real results. So 4 million is included in this budget tonight from decisions that we have made as an administration. We haven't just said we want something, we've gone ahead and done something so that we can deliver what we're delivering now. I think, again, from the Labour benches, we hear the moaning about the waste, the moaning about Brookhouse. Well, in the budget, we're doing something about Brookhouse. You can see it in the numbers right there in front of you. And also what you can see is we're still investing £2.6 million in energy efficiency. I didn't hear that. Congratulations on doing that. We're still investing in estate works, structural works, aids and adaptations. We're investing £1 million into the housing stock that we have to benefit the residents. And I think we're able to do that in great part because of the administration that we have running the finances, a council that we have in front of me in conjunction with officers looking after the finances. We are able as a council to adapt and flex to a change in circumstances such as Brookhouse, but still invest in other areas. Yes, not to the extent that we would like, but we are able to invest and move on. I think lastly what I'd like to say is I've had the opportunity this year to shadow Councillor Sullivan, and I have seen the amount of work that goes into producing what we see in front of us tonight. Every month there is meetings, discussions, and follow-up emails and questions. A lot of work goes into what we see in front of us, and we can see the results of that work here and now. So I'd just like to say thank you to Councillor Sullivan for all his effort and to the officers for their assistance. Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor.
And I call on Councillor Rimmer.
Yes, thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I'm going to not respond to Labour. I'm sure they're going to come up with a comprehensive alternative budget that we can pick through later when we look at the amendments and I look at that opportunity. I mean, I remember last year's comprehensive back of the envelope job that they did, an opportunity they had to actually change the waste system in terms of the strategy, and they were proposed then that it was going to move to fortnightly, but they did not amend it at the time. I noticed that they've dropped any commitment that they put in their leaflets towards keeping the green waste charge at zero. That didn't hear that tonight. That's obviously been dropped. But let's move on. Let's move on to the positives. Absolutely, Councillor Canham is correct, my ward colleague, in talking about the agility of this council to respond to the events that we've had in respect to Brookhouse, but also in respect to the cinema. We can't be in control of whether a private enterprise has actually hit the rocks, as Empire did, unfortunately, probably due to the events in respect of COVID and the impact on that. But my officers worked really hard and diligently to actually turn that around. And it's also testimony to how much Basildon is open for business, that there were 5 cinema operators who put in bids for the cinema, and that we're in a place now that we have a national chain of great repute in View who actually with us and put the planning application to change the sign to View and in those final stages with us. So I think monetarily though, we may not have been able to respond if we hadn't have kept a tight ship budget-wise year on year. If we'd done half the things that the previous administration had been promising, this council would have been bankrupted some time ago, spending $400,000 a year on this, putting up an East Stadium in the town centre, forgetting about the feng shui of the placement. All of these pie-in-the-sky ideas, which would have actually cost this council a lot of money. But we've had the agility to do that. Up and down the land, colleagues of mine who are placed elsewhere, and I'm working with them remotely, are telling me that their councils are closing down swimming pools, closing down cinemas. And I'm proud to say that in my ward, we've been able to fulfil the promise I've been making since I was first elected to open a Pitsea swimming pool that was opened in November, has been a brilliant success, and everybody is loving it, of different ages and different demographics. That's actual real delivery in local government. You may wish to look that up sometime. And on top of that, we're now actually investing money in the clinical diagnosis centre that's going to come into Pitsea and actually improve the health outcomes of people in the borough and across South Essex. And actually, it's going to be great in terms of longevity, but it's also going to be healthier, longer lives and actually make, improve those outcomes. I mean, that everybody wishes to do so. So that's what we're actually doing. But beyond that, we're also doing other town centre regeneration. In terms of Langdon, we're going ahead with the public realms work with the Langdon Library to bring that up. In terms of parking across the borough, in terms of Wickford and in Billericay, we're supporting our high streets there with those businesses that struggle and making sure that they're also supported. We're supporting Basildon Town Centre with our regeneration in the town centre, and also the investment in the creative campus. All of this is our vision for the whole of the borough, for the whole of the borough. We're not parochial, it's not about north or south of the A127 as it seems to be with that lot over there. We're all in it together. And let's actually appreciate that everybody wants all of the borough to thrive, but it's their borough. And that's what we're doing and pushing ahead with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Rimmer. Councillor Mo Larkin.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. Will I support this council tax increase? No. Why? I must mention Councillor Schrader, just to say how, how wonderful it was about the council tax and all the wonderful things we've done. I'd like to mention our nearest neighbour, which is Castle Point. Now, they have frozen their council tax, which I think is admirable, but then, it's an independent administration. That is probably why. Just something else that Councillor Schrader actually said about housing and why it's so bad. I think, we should all write to the Tory government and Rishi Sunak and ask what he's actually doing about illegal immigration, because this is making our council tax worse. Because we can't support these houses, especially if we're not building any, Councillor Schrader. And now, just to mention, because I don't want to keep having a go at Councillor Schrader, just to mention perhaps Councillor Rimmer. I was very glad to hear. Oh no! I was very glad to hear that our cinema is coming on. It's going to be great, but perhaps you can tell us when it is going to open. Because, that would be, just enlighten us when. Because we've been waiting a very, very long time for a cinema.
60 grand a month.
And also, the security on it. How much it's costing us a month. A lot of money.
60 grand a month.
And now, I don't really want to have a go at Councillor Blake, but unfortunately... I know, 2,600 people and rising have signed a petition who are unhappy with the situation with the bins and the bags and everything else. I believe it's been a great shame, the abuse you have had in the media, Councillor Blake, and I don't agree with that. But I just want to say the old age pensioners, quite a few of them in Bursted area where I am, Councillor Blake, who have no computers and have been very unhappy about the bags that have blown away. I've had to replace them and deliver them a bag. And also food bins in Bursted. We have no food bins. I did report it, but that was a long time ago in November. And one constituent whose bin hadn't been, this is not actually in Bursted, her bin had not been emptied. She tried to squeeze them a little bit more in this very small black bin, and guess what? She had a rat jump out on her. It terrified her. I have got proof of it. You can see the pictures. No, it wasn't you, Councillor Rimmer. The pilot scheme should have been at least 2 areas, not just one, not just Note Bridge, which would have made it a bit simpler for us to bring it into action, and not before Christmas, where we all have more rubbish. One of the bags was reported as a UFO flying over Basildon. That's how secure it was. It's absolutely ridiculous. I know it's laughable, but it was.
This is to do with the budget.
Yep, somebody thought it was a UFO. No more knocking Councillor Blake, because I do feel a bit sorry for him. And no hard feelings. No, I've baked you some goodies, and if we do have a refreshment break, they're there for you to all share. Thank you.
Which one's got the...
Thank you very much, Councillor Mo Larkin. Just to say that we will be having a break, and we'll be having one at 9 o'clock. But moving on, I call on Councillor Henry.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. One of the disadvantages of speaking later is that so many people have said so many things, so there's so very little left to speak about. But I will pick up on 3 things I think that have been my biggest, some of my biggest priorities, particularly around the Community Diagnostic Centre, and for all of the reasons that previous councillors or previous speakers have mentioned, not only improves health outcomes for this part of the country, but it also delivers jobs and opportunities across the area. It will increase footfall for those retailers in Pitsea. It will also protect much-loved library services, add to the provision of community activities, providing activities and the ability to keep active for older residents, thus reducing social isolation and loneliness. Another aspect that I'm very, very pleased to see in the budget is the Towngate Theatre investment. I wonder if maybe Yes, please.
Yeah, well, behave yourself.
Yeah, so yes, the investment into the Towngate Theatre, I think up till this point, the Towngate Theatre has served us well, and we've certainly got our money's worth out of it, but you know, it's more than 30 years old. It now requires some wiring, some lighting, and by continuing to invest in its future, we'll be able to protect its ability to provide a great source of entertainment in lots of different fields to many residents, not just in the borough, but very far beyond. Also very pleased to see that we weren't forced to make any cuts to our play area, a 9-year rollout of our play areas. We're now entering year 4 with 10 more planned for this year. We've still got to deliver on the skate park for Lake Meadows, with a further delivery of a skate park for Langdon Victoria Park in the following year. But it is important also not just to find money, but also to put policies behind that actually benefits the spending of that money. Things like the Biodiversity Action Plan, things like the redesignation programme, which we brought to scrutiny, will be taking to Cabinet. That will actually make sure that we get a better bang for our buck. There's no point in throwing money into parks if we're not making sure that we're getting the very best out of them for our residents. So we'll be reprofiling certain areas as town parks and reprofiling others as nature reserves. It's also important to note that we're not the only checkbook in town, so we already work very, very hard with residents to make sure that, with developers and our planning department, to make sure that 106 contributions are spent on time and spent well. Examples of that would be at the Noak Bridge Nature Reserve, Langdon Park. We're just currently spending some works there to do improvements. Not our money, developers' money, but it is important that they work alongside our own budgets. On Monday, we'll be going to open a changing places facility in Lake Meadows. Again, not our money we've drawn down. Great investment in people, a great investment in one of our wonderful parks. I would like to say to Councillor Harrison, I wish we could build more houses. But if you can find me a scheme that's viable, if you can find me somebody that can get something built, I'll build them. But for this moment in time, them's the breaks. We are in one of the most difficult building cycles in many years. There's so much stuff going on, and we are having to work so much harder to try and get these things across the line. I do believe that corner is going to turn. I think we're going to get there very soon with some of our schemes. I wish we could build more. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Henry. I'm going to take Councillor Sargent as the last speaker to the report, and then we'll go on break, and we will have the amendments circulated during break, and break will be about 20 minutes. So, Councillor Sargent.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. Councillor Sullivan has highlighted this evening the need to increase council tax, housing rents under great pressures, but he's still been able to give us investment that we probably didn't think we would have. I'm quite proud of listening to my colleagues, particularly what Councillor Henry just spoke of, the investment that's being made in his service, and Councillor Rimmer, Councillor Schrader, those investments. And I'm also proud in community services. We must remember it's a discretionary service, but look at what we are providing, and we are continuing to provide and make investment in those community services. Take the service level agreements that we have, the CAB. How important is that to our residents, giving advice, particularly in these very difficult times, cost of living, etc. Then you've got the twinning. That gets a very tiny grant, but look at the amount of benefit that brings in for such a small amount of grant. Then take our CVS, how they help us provide our service, how they recruit volunteers. And I'd urge you all to attend their summit that is happening in March, because that will be of great benefit to all of us, because it involves volunteers and how we can better our communities. Then look at community transport, how that goes around the district, taking people, collecting them from their own homes, taking them to our activity centres where they're unable sometimes to use the ordinary transport service. Look what that does to them. The toenail cutting service, the wheelchair aids that they give as well. All for quite low sums of money. We gave a large sum to over a period of 3 years to the youth service. Look at the benefits we've had from that, where it's provided service that goes out into the community, speaking to the young people, getting underneath what their problems are and trying to help them by providing that service to them. So all in all, those services are still running. Oh, and sorry, Deputy Mayor, I mustn't forget the side-by-side that you yourself are involved in, and the community cohesion that's happening since you were given this very small service level agreement. So we mustn't forget that. So all this activity is going on in our communities, and even though we are saying we are cutting You know, we are cutting this, cutting that, and we're increasing this and increasing that. I've spoken about our activity centres. 3 activity centres still running, providing an excellent service to our residents. Our community centres, Langdon, that was nearly due to close. And look how that has got on, and how the money that we have invested in that centre has provided a much better facility for the people of Langdon. And the activity centre, we mustn't get away from those activity centres that give our older residents such a wonderful service, and as my colleague Councillor Henry has said, it takes away that isolation, particularly from those that have lost their partners. They have it gives them a new lease of life to prevent them from loneliness. Look at the work we do, and we assist in with our community supermarkets and our food banks. We have so much to be proud of. We cannot forget that. I could go on and on with what we do, but I won't. Obviously, the time's not there. But I must thank the small team of officers that we have going into our communities, providing help and advice, helping them get grant aid, and assisting them for such little money. So I really thank them all, and again I thank Councillor Sullivan for providing us with an excellent balanced budget. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Sargent. We will now take a break. Refreshments are available in the office area for councillors and council staff. There is water cooler available at the back of the chamber for members of the public. We'll take 20 minutes. The amendments will be circulated. Welcome back, councillors. The meeting has now reconvened, and we will be taking the amendments, speeches on the amendments that was circulated at break time. We call on Councillor Kerry Smith to speak to the amendments, and he's got 5 minutes, and it needs to be seconded.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Deputy Mayor, I have Councillor Mo Larkin to second this. I should be careful how I approach this, because there is a further item restricted by Part 2, and I will not make any more reference apart from this, not disclosing nothing, so you don't have to worry about, Madam Mayor. But I would have used some of that funding to ensure all of the borough would have been covered by my amendment. But I'll read out to members what the crux of this is. We want weekly bin collections reinstated back in Basildon. I appreciate what Councillor Blake was saying about all this green malarkey, but let's be clear. By 2028, the County Council is going to burn all of the county's rubbish. So all this messing around with bins and bags and God knows what else, within 4 years it's all going to get burnt by county. And when you have incinerators, the recycling rates nosedive because it's cheaper for local authorities to burn. So that's just the point of reference before I proceed. So, now when speaking with officers to go through this, because this has to be approved by the Section 151 officer to be financially viable. Now, he says the earliest we can restore, in consultation with the relevant director, a weekly bin service will take 6 months for 2 reasons. One, we need approval from the Interwaste Essex Authority. They need advance notice, and also to buy the extra refuse trucks. So what my motion is seeking here today is all of the wards south of the 127 restoring their weekly bin collections. Now, I know some members might say up in front of me that what about north of the 127? Just remember what I said at the start. I would have played on that money to give you guys the north. But equally, everybody knew when they voted last May in the local elections, if you voted Conservative, you was voting for fortnightly bin collections. There was no state secret about that. Councillor Blake was very upfront and clear and honest in his usual way, and he'll argue the toss. But people knew their minds. So apart from one ward south of the 127, everyone else south of the 127 voted for candidates that supported weekly bin services. That was the view of the Basildon people. Now, north of the 127, there was a similar anomaly with the re-election of Councillor Brockman. I almost lost her name for a moment. Councillor Brockman. And she's very pro-weekly waste collection, but that's how the people voted. People north of the 127 was happy to support candidates who were going to endorse and implement a fortnightly bin collection, apart from one, and vice versa south of the 127. That's how the people of this borough voted. And as I say, I'd like everyone to have it. You members will see how it is funded, and then to cost that as well, we shouldn't be paying for social workers, which this authority took on as a sort of carrot or a banana skin to say you ain't getting a youth, so have that instead. Well, we're the highest payers to Essex County Council. They should be paying for these social workers, not the taxpayer of Basildon Council. Counties had their money off us, they should be paying for that. And the other method of paying for restoring weekly bin collections in Basildon is restoring weekend parking charges to Billericay and Wickford. If I come to Basildon on a weekend, there is the odd free car park at Asda, which is not nice, not nice. But the other car parks, I have to pay and park. Basildon's town centre is dying, right? It is dying.
It's dying.
And I think it would be fair to ask people in Billericay and Wickford to pay a fair parking rate. And members will also remember at a bus forum, the bus companies wanted parking charges in Billericay and Wickford because it supported more passengers on the buses. And as we heard from Councillor Blake, we have to worry about the environment or Greta Thunberg's going to kick the door in on the council offices. Not that I'd be fazed by her. Also within my budget amendment, And it's worth just noting this. When I first spoke with officers several weeks ago, they gave me an initial price of 2 million. And look how it's magically dropped to 1,250,000. So if you push this door, you're starting to get far better numbers for the taxpayer, and I'd urge all members, push back. We need the weekly bin collections. But also to save the 3 bowling clubs in Basildon, because the bowling club in Billericay and Wickford are not under threat, they're safe. But the 3 bowling clubs that serve south of the 127, excuse me, Madam Chairman and members, the 3 bowling clubs south of the 127 are under threat of closure. And just to conclude, because I can hear your bleeper, is to install a footpath across the park in Clay Hill Lane. There is no pavement, and it is so people can get to Club Kingswood, Basildon Golf Course, on one day if Councillor Rimmer can find his pen and sign off on the ambulance hub, then people will be able to walk down there rather than take their life in their hands sharing a highway surface with pedestrians. So I would urge all members, particularly the members who represent wards south of the 127, stick by your constituents or don't moan when the ballot papers are tipped out against you on the 2nd of May. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Thank you very much. Councillor Mo Larkin, I believe you're seconding that.
Reserve the right.
Yes, I'm going to second this and just want to speak slightly on it. That's
Councillor
all.
Smith, can you switch off your mic?
Oh, sorry.
Just a couple of points to reiterate what Councillor Smith has said. You know, I do back the weekly black bin collections, definitely. Most of my phone calls and inquiries have been about the bin collection. The car parking in Basildon, I support. So there's no payment at weekends. It might rejuvenate the town. As Tesco says, every little helps to bring it back. And mostly the bowling clubs. That's all. Thank you. Thank you, Madam.
Councillor Blake.
Thank you. I'm going to keep this short and sweet, because I'm sure other people are going to come in on top of this. So let me get this right. We're going to keep the what you've been arguing. We're going to scrap the bin charge. We're going to keep the bin charge. We're happy for that to be increased to £50. We're going to keep the white and blue bags. No issue with them at all. We're going to trial something for 6 months, and if it works, we can't fund it onwards. There's no money there unless there's a substantial cost there. So I'd have liked to have seen what those substantial costs were, savings are going to be, and where they're going to come from. Because I can't see anything here. You're trialling something that, if worked, and I don't believe it would, because I think I'm happy with what we got on fortnightly, you then can't fund at all. You certainly can't fund it for the whole of the borough. You're happy with the, you said earlier we should be putting the council tax up. You've not changed that. It's still 2.98. You've not changed the council tax at all. So you're not really that bothered about putting it up to 2.98. Even if I accepted your view, there wasn't enough money there to do the whole of the borough. Why not done half between south and north of the A127 to show that, you know, the unity of it? So you're doing that. Why just target the south? Or is it because there's an election coming up? So I could go on, but I'm sure there's others going to pinpoint some of the other issues. You've not justified any way at all that you're going to be able to fund this after 6 months. The bins, we're going to, as you know, and I mentioned it several times, the black bins, we are looking at the criteria to change that to make it easier for others to get a second bin if need be. Which we, you know, and that will be announced very, very shortly. And I think that's worth waiting for alone. But what I will say, if people do want other bins and get them, we will do audits on them. And we have already done audits on those bins. And let me tell you a quite interesting fact. Of the 14 we've done audits on, only 4 of them are actually using it for as they should be. The rest were still putting their clothes in and rubbish in and everything like that. So that is a concern. But we want to encourage people to recycle, and hopefully they won't need that second bin. And a fortnightly collection is absolutely superb. I heard Mo Larkin mentioned earlier about 2,600 signed a petition for the bags and the bins and etc. That wasn't the case at all. The only issue on that petition was the fortnightly, going back to weekly bin collection. It was nothing whatsoever to do with the bags whatsoever. And out of 2,600 people that signed that, there were think about the other rest of the vendors that didn't sign it. So there's a lot of people out there are very much in support of the fortnightly bin collection. They have issues and have tried, and as I said, we've notified it, that there is an issue with the bags, and I accept that. But you didn't even address that. Let me make it quite clear as well, what I said very early in my very opening statements. The charges for the bags that we will go down the line and get have got absolutely nothing to do with this budget. I made it quite clear it will come out of costs that we will find the savings for. I made it quite clear. So there's nothing in this budget that we've set tonight that is implementing that we are going to have to be paying for those extra bags. That is done. Those extra bags did cost. I do question the amount that you said they were. But as I said earlier, even if that was the sum that you think it is, we're saving over £2 million a year. We're saving over £2 million a year. Going back your way, we're going to lose that overnight. Literally, if you go for a yearly stuff going to the landfill, the council will about £1.3 million alone in added costs for residual waste going into that. Not on, and you can shake your head as much as you like. You've actually got it down in here that it more or less says that it's going to cost. So we know there's going to be an extra cost of 1.3 million alone just for the residual waste. Forgetting everything else, forgetting the extra delivery of the bins, forgetting the extra charges for the whole of borough. Absolutely ridiculous. And Kerry, you know I'm a fan of yours. You know I like you, and I keep on getting told off by my members. I'm too trusting of you, but I am. I do, and I know your heart's in the right place. But this is just playing politics. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Blake. I call on Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. While I commend Councillor Smith for speaking up for his residents and seeking to make a difference to their lives for their number one issue facing them in the borough, I do have issues with the method he's using to get there and the short 6-month time period that the amendment covers. And so Labour won't be able to support this amendment as it presently stands today. Labour are committed to resolving waste issues for the whole borough, north and south of the 127. The current arrangements of fortnightly bins is impacting everybody, and the borough is united in demanding change. If Labour are lucky enough to lead an administration after May, we will look to fix the issue for everybody, looking at options to do so and making the necessary changes to deliver it. I feel it is fruitless to make commitments on how to achieve this in our current position as opposition councillors, where we don't have the full financial picture and can't impact future decisions made by this council that would change the financial situation in the coming months and years, including Part 2 issues that Councillor Smith has already alluded to and other Part 2 issues that cannot be discussed in this meeting. Our ambition is for the whole borough, and if successful in May, and Labour administration will deliver for the whole borough. We cannot let short-term fixes get in the way of long-term ambition, and so Labour will not be able to vote for this amendment, but instead we'll abstain until the full financial picture is clearer and a roadmap for a long-term return to weekly bin collections for every household in our borough can be set out.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. Councillor Sullivan.
Best of luck to you.
Yes, thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. Well, this isn't really a serious alternative budget, Deputy Mayor. It's a stunt. It's a political stunt and a very bad one. What is the point, as Councillor Blake has said, of doing a trial where there's no hope of implementing whatever outcomes that you find from the trial? And if Councillor Smith thinks that he can go ahead without including all of the communities north of the A127, then he shouldn't go ahead with this in the first place. He should just scrap it. We're one borough. We have always treated this borough as one. When you look at all the investments that we've put across this borough, both north and south of the A127, that I listed in my speech earlier. So if you cannot do something for the whole borough, don't do it at all. Whether or not it's something to do with some Part 2 agenda item or not is irrelevant. Now, in his introduction to this, Councillor Smith, in fact, didn't address the comments that were made by the Section 151 and the service officer in this, which quite clearly show that this is just not even worth the paper it's written on. So when you look at the Section 151 commentary, the last sentence there, any service continuation thereafter would require very significant ongoing savings and or additional income to be identified and realised. Well, I mean, talk about stating the obvious. I mean, if you, as I just said, what is the point of doing a test, a trial, if you can't implement it? And there quite clearly says there's no means or been identified of implementing whatever it is that you might think you can get out of this trial. So there you have the Section 151 officer. You didn't address that when you spoke. And then when you go on to the service commentary, then he says the proposal to revert to weekly residual waste collection will not meet the council's published and adopted waste strategy or revised waste strategy for Essex. This means recycling rate targets are unlikely to be met, having a negative impact on the council's net zero targets. But not only that, a massive loss of recycling income that Councillor Blake has already mentioned in his speech. And then the service officer goes on, the proposal as written will need the approval of Essex Waste Partnership. This is unlikely to be supported, which could result in significant charge or withholding of IAA funding to Basildon. So there again, this whole proposal is just not worth the paper it's written on, because even if the trial was a resounding success, and I don't know how he would judge that, he doesn't give us any parameters as to how it would be judged, we couldn't implement anything off the back of it anyway. Just to add to that, of course, the cost of this is 140,000 ongoing. That's an additional financial pressure, and he was bemoaning earlier the raising council tax. Well, that will increase it. That will increase the pressure. As Councillor Blake has said, he doesn't mention the replacing of the SACs, which he was saying earlier carry disease or something. If I had proposed this alternative budget to my group, they would have thrown me out. They would have said, they would have just told me you are having a laugh. It's just a stunt and not even a very good one. Yeah. Finally, I would just wanted to mention, not to Councillor Smith, to Councillor Harrison, we managed alternative budgets when we were in opposition. You had exactly the same opportunity that we did. We took that opportunity, but you've chosen not to. I will not be voting for this alternative budget. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Councillor Andy Baggott.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. First of all, I'd like to thank Councillor Smith for actually at least putting some thought into producing an alternative budget. We have a Labour group here that have been the opposition for years, have now almost dissolved themselves. There's only 4 of them here tonight. Councillor Harrison talking about all the things he'd do, about all the waste changes he'd make, but not even bothered to actually put together a budget to show how it would be delivered. Happy to put out a leaflet at election time saying this is what we're going to do, but when the opportunity is there to put his money where his mouth is, there is no money. All there is the hot air coming out of his mouth. But Councillor Smith's budget, it's actually a budget of community division and spite. No other word for it. It's a budget of buying votes. It's a 6-month stunt. And what hasn't been mentioned is the cost to it. It comes at a cost of £140,000 a year for the next 20 years for the borrowing that's needed to actually start it. And that is smoke and mirrors without any game plan. Now, we have consistently said as an administration that we act equally and fair across this borough, and I stand by that. Now, Councillor Smith lambasted us for a 2.9% increase in council tax, but as has already been said, he's kept it. So, not consistent yet again. But what it does is it shows what an administration with the influence of Councillor Smith might look like come election time. An administration where his friends and his pet projects get all of the money, and his spite for the north of the 127 is manifest, that they get nothing because he is consumed with hatred, it seems, for that element of the community. A budget that, if you're in his crowd, you will get funding. If you're not in his crowd, you're out. A budget of nepotism and all the wrong things about local government. So what this says is not what it says on the paper about what the figures are. It says what the measure of that independent group is all about in this borough. Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Baggott. Councillor Schrader.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. Well, like Councillor Baggott, I will give the independent group some credit for at least having bothered to put something to paper. Genuinely disappointed in the Labour group. I actually did think they might finally produce one this year because we had a bit of mood music, but no, as usual. Considering they're supposed to be the main opposition group, although actually there's less of them here tonight than there is of the independents. But it is worth noting, as Councillor Sullivan said, that certainly in all of the 11 years I've been on the council, obviously we've been in administration, we've been in opposition, and when we've been in administration, we've produced the budget. Whenever the Conservative group have been in opposition, we have always moved a fully costed alternative budget signed off by the 151 officer as deliverable. And when we've then taken administration, that alternative budget has generally been moved in an emergency council meeting as an emergency budget, and we have implemented what we said we would do. So we've gone into the election, we've presented the voters with what we would have done if we were running the budget, and then we have largely implemented what we said we would do. And there is, as Councillor Sullivan said, no reason why the Labour opposition couldn't have done that. So, to be fair to Councillor Smith and the Independents, they have, to an extent, put their money where their mouth is. And despite, Councillor Harrison's strong words about moving heaven and earth to, change the waste stuff, he couldn't even be bothered to move a piece of paper. So, the independent group's alternative budget is odd, though. It really is a glorified amendment, to be perfectly honest. But as was mentioned earlier, both Councillor Smith and Councillor Larkin spoke very passionately against the council tax rise, but they've kept it. He's also keeping his pathogen bags, which seems a curious decision. It's been nominally signed off by the 151 officer, but as Councillor Sullivan mentioned, it's certainly heavily caveated with a whole load of stuff that basically tells us that it's completely undeliverable, pie in the sky nonsense that's just going to go nowhere, because it's fundamentally, even if you get to the end of the 6 months and it's all gone tickety-boo, nothing you can do with it because the money just isn't there. It's clearly potty. But credit to them for moving something, but it's a nonsense. And ultimately, now in it for my constituents, so deliberately so, clearly. So he's given me no reason to vote for it, so he's clearly not even serious about passing it. So he's given me no reason to vote for it, so I won't. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Schrader. Councillor Gascoigne.
Thank you very much. Much of what I wanted to cover has sort of been covered, so I'll just focus on one, I think, quite a significant aspect to this when it comes to the service commentary, in which the independents have actually admitted that they will not hit their recycling rate targets, and they'll have a negative impact on the council's net zero targets. Now, I can guarantee you the vast majority of the residents of our borough care about the environment, they care about recycling, and they care about meeting our net zero targets. And the fact that you, well-known climate change denier, I might add, continue to then push this extremely toxic agenda on our residents is, as far as I'm concerned, shameful. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gascoigne. Moving on, Councillor Sargent.
Thank you, Deputy Madam Mayor. Most of the arguments been made against the budget or the alternative budget, stroke, whatever you want to call it. I just want to really speak about the actual why it's being mooted about this evening, that people want the weekly bin collection back in place. I really don't get that, because I represent a ward. Yes, it is north of the 127, but whereas most of the people now are actually agreeing with this fortnightly wheelie bin black collection, simply because it is at the effect that it's having on increasing recycling is phenomenal. I mean, I'm sure that Councillor Blake has already done so or can do so, give us all the figures that it's gone up by. But what I see in my ward is that there is far greater recycling and much less black sacks in the bins, and no one is saying to me we want the black collections back to weekly. So I really don't understand that. I suppose I get it from some of the areas where people have never recycled, but I just think it's been a learning curve. We all know, and I'm sure every member here has had lots and lots of complaints in the very beginning, myself included. But over time, it's bedded in, and people are now getting used to it. And as we've said, it's increasing, it's having the desired effect, which it should do, that we're increasing more, we're reducing the residual waste, not spending so much in landfill tax, which is a good thing. So I don't see why we need to change it. Even the bags come to that, because at the moment, what I see on our rubbish day is just lengths of the road with blue and white, black, blue and white, black, green, and so on. And I feel quite proud of that, to think that my neighbourhood is adhering, regardless of all the bad feeling that we've had in the very beginning. But the other point that I want to pick up on is the youth workers, and that the county should pay. I do believe that this will be coming to the People Scrutiny Committee, and members will be able to see for themselves the good that our investment has done for our young people. What about the young people within this area that this budget really refers to? What about those young people? Do they not have a voice and say, oh, we should scrap it? And what would have happened if we'd have invested in a youth zone by now? It would have been redundant. It would have been bankrupt. But this isn't. These youth workers are actually doing outreach work, going out into the streets and into the depths of these communities to find these young people and giving them the help that they need. So I would be sad, I have to say, if in a year's time we have to cut this budget. But we have another year of it, and I just want that to go on and do far better things than it's already done, to prove to members of this council and our communities how good we are on dealing with our waste and dealing with our young people. Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sargent, and I call on Councillor Rimmer, but before Councillor Rimmer speaks, I will not be taking any more speakers, apart from the ones that are already on the list.
You're already on the list.
Yeah, he's already on the list, apart from those that are already on the list. So please don't put your hands up, because I won't be calling you. Thank you. Councillor Rimmer.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. To be honest, I mean, I was wondering how this is going to work, because obviously we've gone through a budget setting process where we've looked at all of the options, and there's been some really difficult decisions that have had to be made. What this alternative budget shows is how difficult it is to make those decisions, and that there are no easy choices. Unfortunately, I don't agree with the choices made, because for a 6-month trial, the cost is 1.3 million, and we're paying that back over 25 years as a borough for a 6-month trial. And unfortunately for me, that is disproportionate in terms of the impact of Basildon Borough residents and paying that back, because you're locking in for the next 25 years the need to increase council tax by at least 1% above inflation. And unfortunately, we can't even do that, because if inflation is above the cap, we don't have the ability to do that without a referendum. So I feel that in the long term, not in the short term, but this is one of those measures that could actually lead this council into 114 notice actually being given to it. I'm not saying it does on its own. I'm just saying it's those sort of building blocks that actually lead to imprudence in terms of our finances. And the least fact right budget I've seen. Unfortunately, I mean, there is one good measure in there, I do see. Although it is a bit of pork barrel politics, I have nothing against local member investments. And it's a shame that 35,000 for this pathway couldn't have been done as a separate amendment rather than part of some grand alternative budget, because I think it is good for members to put forward investments and because they know their local area well and they know what's needed. So it's a shame that wasn't put as a separate amendment. But as things stand, it's really difficult to justify something that will only be a 6-month trial, has no hope of being funded beyond that, and is going to cost each resident, north and south of the A127, 140,000 a year for the next 25 years. I think that would be JRable, to be honest. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councillor. A remark on Councillor Brockman.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Chair. Well, Kerry, you know I really do like you, love. I really do. But this time well, I can't say what I say, but I know Kevin Blake knows what I'm thinking. Weekly bin collections back. Yeah, lovely, wonderful. But what have you got against the north of the 127? Let's face it, you started on that. We've been left out, us and Billericay and Note Bridge and all that. Right, okay, you've left us out. And then you want to take away our free parking on a Saturday and Sunday, which is one thing that gets Wickford High Street going. Right, so I can't support it. Got a rat's chance in hell getting me to support this, darling. And the other thing, if you hate us so much, why don't you set up a passport control across the 127 and make it really bloody hard for everyone to cross? Right, that's it, sorted.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brockman. Moving on, Councillor Turner.
Well, I mean, yes, credit to bring this forward. And, yeah, it's hard not to be seduced by Kerry Smith, isn't it? I mean, not hard, no. I mean, if we were honest, if the world was a simpler place, we'd just go back to one bag where we'd stuff all our stuff in it, and that's it. It would get collected nice and easy. That's the ideal, isn't it? Exactly. But whether Councillor Smith likes it or not, we're all environmentalists. We're all green, including you. We pay our taxes. It goes to different schemes. And this is just one of them. And the fact is, I mean, Councillor Sullivan said it's a political stunt, and all credit to you, but it will be seen as a political stunt. Now, Councillor Sullivan, unlike Councillor Sullivan, he said it's not a very good one at that. I think it's half good. Yeah? You can write your literature. You can go out to your constituents, you can go out to our constituents and say the Conservatives voted not to return to black sacks. There are people across the borough, including Billericay, that would love to go back to weekly black sacks. There's no doubt about it. But not everybody. And not everybody would when they knew what the downsides were, and that is financial. And this shows the difference between a prudent, financially well-managed Conservative administration that is trying to wrestle with real-world problems and bring to bear a sustainable future, financial future, as well as everything else, or those political stunts, I'm sorry to say. So other people, I think, dare I say, the intelligent ones amongst them will see this for what it is. And it is, I won't say it's reckless, but it's politically mischievous. And that's all it is. Because, as the 151 officer said, yes, sustainable to do the 6-month trial, but not sustainable beyond that. And that's what you need to tell residents in your leaflet, dare I say. Because at the end of the day, we have brought in a pretty unpopular policy for all the right reasons. And I take my hat off to Councillor Blake, who I'm sure he's a lot shorter now than he was when, but he's got broad shoulders. And what's gone down really well, and this motion doesn't touch on it really, and that is the agreement from Councillor Blake that he has heard the residents and he is prepared to do something on waste, particularly the recycling element. And that for particularly Budgetary, and I kid you not, for the last 11 weeks I've been manning the social media trying to prop this up. That's the bit that has gone down and resonated with members. And yeah, there'll be people in Budgetary, particularly the lady at Temple Close, who didn't get her black bin collected for 6 weeks. Would you believe we got it collected? She put it out the other day, last Tuesday, and they missed it. Oh. Can you believe it? So yeah, she'll be in your camp. She will be saying, let's bring back weekly black sack collections. But if we can deal with people like this fair lady, and if we can deal with the bin criteria, these are steps to put in the service right. And this is what the resident charge a Conservative administration who are listening, who are open to suggestions. This is what they want to hear. And while it's expedient to get away with a politically mischievous type motion, it isn't sustainable, Kerry, unfortunately. So as much as I'm seduced by it, as much as I'd like to go down that nostalgic route to say, let's bring back just one black sack and put all our rubbish in there, it's not going to fly. And particularly when you hear the Fair Labour Party, incidentally, we've got the best four, well, I won't say best 4 members, it's best 3 members. I'll work it out amongst yourselves who that odd one is. But when the opposition party... oh, you got it, you got it.
You started a new war.
Yeah, as in fighting. When the opposition are against their own coalition partners, you know you're onto a bit of a loser. I think the resident looking in tonight will be sympathetic for your motion, but when they hear about the downsides, about county might not accept it, the cost, the burden that would be brought about by doing this, then it all becomes pretty much in focus. It becomes in context, and as much as I'd like to support it, I'm not going to, and I don't think, in terms of being credible and not reckless, we can afford to go down that route. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Councillor Walter-Brown.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I will be voting for this motion, as you'd expect. I'm an independent representing Lendon Hills ward. I just want to say that it's quite neat how hypocritical even, neatly hypocritical, that in the one hand, people are very much for Basildon and basically saying that everyone is in it together, that we're all in the same boat. The problem is some people's boats, just as with the pandemic, are bigger than others. And some people had lockdown in a small flat, and some people had balconies and big gardens, and we weren't all really in it together. And it's the same thing when people say that, well, we should all have weekly bin sacks, or no one should have weekly bin sacks. Councillor Smith's proposal is that the south of the 127 gets weekly bin collections and the north of the 127 won't receive it at this time. But that's how the political parties, as he mentioned in his speech, had voted. The north of the 127 voted primarily for political parties that were very clearly going to have bin collections every 2 weeks, and south of the 127 democratically voted for parties that wanted to have weekly bin collections. So we're all in this together. We should have one boat. That we're all in it together is a pack of lies. And it's not more. It's the most surprising thing, the most obvious way in which we're not all in it together is that the proposal ultimately for Black Sacks is to build an incinerator in Pitsea. So the idea is it is. So it is. So it is. So people north of the 127 vote for parties that impose an incinerator on Pitsea for the health of the health of people in Pitsea. I know you represent Pitsea, Councillor Rimmer, but I'm not lying. Yes.
Well, keep talking. Shut your
No.
gate now.
Sorry, one. Can we sorry, can we just bring it back?
What I
to
would
the
like to
meeting,
say
please? Thank
is
you.
that although everyone is very much saying that we should have it the same for north and south of the 127, the political parties, the democratic vote went differently. You're happy to scrap a Basildon plan, local plan that was there at the cost of millions to the taxpayer, the local taxpayer, on the justification that it is what the people democratically voted for. And we're saying we want weekly bin collections because people democratically voted for it for the south of the 127. So I don't see any problem, and the hypocritical nature of people saying that there is a problem because it's not blanket for north and south, and it's petty politicking by Councillor Smith is wrong. He is saying let democracy speak, put Basildon first, put the people of Basildon first, and that means giving them what they wanted. And they clearly showed their intent of what they wanted at the ballot box at the previous election, where they voted south of the 127 for weekly bin collections, and north of the 127, Mainz have voted for parties that wanted to have two weekly bin collections, so they won't be unhappy at the outcome that Councillor Smith is proposing. And if it means ultimately that the incinerator is put in Pitsea by the county council, the Tory-led county council, then that is a clear case of us not all being in the boat together. That the people ruling over the people who have the desire to have weekly bin collections do not have their interests at heart. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Calling on Councillor Carol Morris.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor.
One house, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. Many people have already commented on the fact that actually the independents have gone to the trouble of producing an alternative budget when the Labour Party haven't even managed to make an amendment to the budget. And I am bringing that issue up because I'd like to remind people that the leader of the Labour Party asked for an increase in her allowances because of all the time she was going to spend producing that budget. And I think that money, that £6,000, actually belongs to Councillor Smith in this instance. But that aside, that aside, I have got to say before I say anything about the budget that I find it extremely naive, if that's the word, when members of the independent group are going on about how people voted for to have only one collection a week. I'm sure that people don't just vote on that one issue when they're putting their cross on the ballot paper. Anyway, with regards to this budget, the £1,400 that is in the investments, nearly 1,300 of it is to do with this black bin collection issue, which, funnily enough, is the same amount is going to be removed from reserves. And this is only for half of the borough. So one has to assume that for the whole borough, it would have been 2,600 or thereabouts. Now, either the Section 151 officer forgot to tell Councillor Smith, or either that or Councillor Smith forgot to take any notice, but if you read on page 67, it clearly states that continuing to meet budget gaps from reserves is unsustainable, as these balances are unable to support recurring expenditure, as once they are spent, they are gone. And that is the problem with this particular issue in that respect. I also find it extremely strange that when Councillor Smith was speaking earlier in the evening, his priorities were to lower the debt on the housing stock, and he wanted to build more houses, and he wanted single-use bags for the recycling waste, and he wanted to freeze council tax. none of which is in this budget. So it really is rather strange to have those comments made and then this budget presented to us. So, you know, I don't think he's achieving his own aims for one thing, and I don't think it'd work for another. So I won't be voting for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Morris. Councillor Henry.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I will not be supporting this for one very, very, very simple reason. When you're elected, you have in your head that you're the councillor for your own street, and you suddenly very, very quickly realise that you're not just the councillor for your street or your ward or your town, but you're equally as responsible for the people that live in Wickford as Eunice, as she is for the people that live in my street. You take on all of the town or none of the town. I will not be part of any budget amendment or any alternative budget that actually throws 40% of our residents in the dustbin. Quite apart from all of the other lines that are on this, the fact that this only reflects 60% of this borough in terms of towns, I'm not having a debate on it, so it's a no from me.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to now vote on the amendment. All those for?
Basildon first.
Thank you. All those against? Any abstentions? Thank you.
Yep. The vote is lost. So basically, just say the vote's lost. Right, so it's 24 against.
Okay. The vote is lost, 24 against, and...
Carry on.
Thank you. Okay. We're now moving on to the substantial. Does anyone want to speak on the substantive? No? Can we go to... he can wrap up. Okay, Councillor Sullivan, you have 10 minutes to round up.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. It seems so long ago that we were discussing the actual budget, but I'll go through the comments we've had from both sides of the chamber. Starting with Councillor Schrader, I thank him for his kind words, and as he mentioned about homelessness, the effect of homelessness, that means there are no easy decisions, but it wasn't me delivering this budget, it's not my budget, it's the budget of the Conservative administration and the help of the officers, and it's, you know, it really is and always has been a team effort in that regard. With regard to Councillor Harrison, he denigrated several aspects of this borough. First of all, the cinema, which I'm very confident that this will soon come to fruition. But this, at least, is our vision. We have a vision for the town centre, and I think it's in contrast to the Labour group, who doesn't have any vision for the town centre at all. And we have a vision that I'm confident when it comes to fruition will make a massive positive effect on the town centre. He also gives this apocalyptic view of the state of the estates. Well, I can say that we are addressing that with our Safe and Sound programme, as well as our community wardens, to make them not only safer but also better places to live. He went on about the waste. I don't think I really need to go on any more than to say that obviously they want weekly bin collections, but there's no alternative budget to be able to address that. He complained also about the increase in the rents, and then he said he wanted to increase social housing and increase the amount of repairs. Well, the HRA is funded by the rents pretty much entirely, so unless the rents are able to keep pace with the requirements of building social housing and repairs, then there's no other way of doing it. And finally, as is the general Labour mantra, he blamed the economic situation on the Conservative government. Well, inflation and the economic situation and downturn is an international issue. Germany is about to go into recession. America is inflation is not defeated. It's not a UK or a Tory phenomenon at all. Difficult financial situation. Councillor Smith mentioned about how slow it was to get some building projects to fruition. That is a problem across the whole of the building industry, and a lot of that is down to the shortage or the increase in cost of raw materials. He then mentioned that he wanted to, that had we introduced his idea a few years ago of different bags, then we could have cut council tax. Well, the cost of the bags would have been come from capital, whereas the council tax, of course, is revenue. So that really wouldn't have had any impact on council tax if we'd have implemented bags that he suggested a year or two ago. He did mention about Councillor Turner and Councillor Baggott as leaders, and I would have to say that I've served under both of them as finance cabinet member, and they're both as easy and as difficult to get on with as each other.
Point of order, Madam Chairman. I think that's a slur against Councillor Turner's reputation.
Councillor Baggott mentioned community wardens, a subject he's very passionate about, but also value for money. And I think this budget also gives us value for money because of the amount of efficiencies that are in it, including the management restructuring, which is making sure that the council is run as efficiently as possible. Yeah. Councillor Canham mentioned about the ground maintenance, the increase in the budget on that. Well, that will, that can be used either for grass cutting or pruning, depending on the circumstances of it. Different weather brings out different situations of weeds or bushes or whatever. But nevertheless, it's something that affects the whole borough. And as always in a Conservative budget, we implement things that impact the whole borough. Yeah. And he also mentioned that there were no opposition solutions, which I think has just been proved a minute ago. Councillor Rimmer mentioned about how the Conservative administration has delivered in Pitsea and across the borough, and that is something I reflect on. Councillor Larkin compared us to Castle Point, who froze council tax, but once again, where's the alternative budget that will enable us to have done it? Councillor Henry mentioned about the town gate. Well, the budget provision in this budget is actually to finish off the works that we started on the town gate. It's in fact part of a total of about £3.2 million, and that is, it must be remembered that it's not a given that the Towngate Theatre remains open. It requires funding like any other asset, and it could quite easily have been closed had we been had we looked to save money in that way, but we didn't. We have in fact invested in the Towngate Theatre, and it's worth remembering that previous Labour administrations in the 1980s and 90s and the early 2000s closed the Towngate Theatre. They closed it because they couldn't run it. We have opened it and we have kept it open, and we have kept investing in the Towngate Theatre. Councillor Henry also mentioned about how our play strategy has continued and our skate parks across the borough, and the skate parks are across the borough again. We've got one in Billericay, one in Pitsea, and one that will come forward in Langdon. So again, we're doing stuff across the borough. Councillor Sargent mentioned community services, and these are people that are really unsung heroes, and we continue to fund them and recognise the importance of them. And whether it's those small community groups or, as she mentioned, the Langdon Community Centre, and that was a real achievement, I believe, of this administration to not only keep it open, but to also improve and develop it. Absolutely. And I think that is something that the people of Langdon could be really happy with. I believe that was all of the comments I had, Madam Deputy Mayor, so I just ask you now if we could go to the vote, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, councillors. We'll now take a vote on the substantive. And all those who are for? All those against? Any abstentions? is...
29. What's the 4? I've tried, okay, yeah, sorry. 25 4.
So it's sustained.
No, so there's no abstention, so it's 25 4, 9 against. That's
Okay,
it. That's
okay.
it.
So we've got 25 for and 9 against.
So it's passed.
So it's passed. Thank you. So moving on to number 10.
Yeah, read it, number 10.
Okay. Exclusion of the public press, the public and the press. I will now take a vote to exclude the public and press from meeting during consideration of the following item on the grounds that it is likely that if members of the public and press were present during the item, there would be disclosure of them of exempt information as defined by paragraphs 1, 2, and 3 of Part 1 of Schedule 12A to the Local Government Act 1972, and the public interest in maintaining this exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. For those, sorry? Okay. Okay. Those for?
For the vote.
You're going to be independent.
Okay, we got it?
You got one.
Against? Anyone against? Abstentions?
Well done, Walter. Man with sense.